Update Direct Hit saw the arrival of several new Rank 7 aircraft to the game. One of these was the Japanese F4EJ Kai. Will this fighter cause the sun to rise once more for the Japanese tech tree? Let's find out. Following the end of World War II, Japan would ratify a new constitution that would prevent the creation of a military. Instead, they would rely on the US to provide military protection. At this time, the US was forward deploying units all across Japan, but following the Korean War, they would switch to holding troops in strategic reserve on Hokkaido and other bases further out in the Pacific so that they could quickly deploy to any crisis area. This effectively forced Japan to build an army, as the US was not protecting most of the country. Still, wanting to prevent expansionism from coming back to Japan, they would limit their military to a defense force only, becoming the shield to America's spear. The Japanese Air Self-Defense Force would initially field F-86 Sabres after they were established in 1954. In the early 1960s, they would acquire F-104s to combat newer Soviet aircraft, and in 1968 they would put in an order for F4EJs. The original EJs stripped out all the equipment that was used for ground attack munitions, as these were forbidden at the time, though in later years these restrictions would relax. These Japanese Phantoms would be used purely for interception and air superiority. The F4EJ would enter service with the JASDF units in 1972. However, these aircraft would prove inefficient in the interception role during the defection of MiG-25 pilot Victor Belenko on September 6, 1976. On this day, two F4EJ Phantoms were scrambled from Chitose Air Base, but were unable to complete the interception due to weather causing poor visibility and Belenko flying his MiG too low for the F4's radars to pick up. Several steps were taken to remedy this problem. One was to acquire E2 Hawkeye airborne early warning and control aircraft. The second was to acquire F-15s, and the final was to upgrade existing F4EJs to the F4EJ Kai standard. The F4EJ Kai would receive a new pulse Doppler radar, a redesigned cockpit that resembled the F-15's cockpit, new IFF, navigation, and RWR equipment, and finally new missiles. These would include AIM-9P and L Sidewinders, as well as AIM-7E and F Sparrows. Though plans for slated wings like those seen on the Agile Eagle upgrade, the American F4s, were considered, they were ultimately ruled out due to cost. An easy way you can tell whether the F4EJ is a Kai or not is by looking for the radomes for the new RWR system. There are two rear-facing radomes on the top of the tail and one forward-facing on each of the wingtips. One of the two main upgrades to the F4EJ Kai that makes a difference for us in War Thunder is the AN APG-66J Pulse Doppler radar. A pulse Doppler radar works by detecting the target's movement relative to the ground. So an aircraft coming towards you or away from you will have either a positive or a negative velocity to the ground. This allows the Kai to effectively lock up targets against the ground, giving it excellent look-down, shoot-down capabilities. However, this also opens up the possibility for a target to break the lock using a technique called notching. Notching is when the enemy aircraft flies horizontally to your own aircraft and hides itself in the notch filter. This filter is what removes the ground clutter from your radar screen, effectively hiding the plane from your radar. Your pulse Doppler radar will not be decoyed by chaff unlike previous radars we have seen in the game. The AN APG-66J is a great upgrade over the old APQ-120s found on the F4EJs, but it is only half of what makes the EJ Kai one of the deadliest planes in the game. Find the other half, we're going to have to look at the weapons the F4EJ Kai can carry. The F4EJ Kai gets some dumb bombs and rockets that you can play around with, as well as both CCIP and CCRP to allow for accurate employment of these weapons. This is good enough for killing some bases or destroying ground targets towards the end of the game. though don't expect the Kai to be a good ground RB plane given the current state of SAMs. As far as guns go, the Kai is armed with a license-produced JM61A1 20mm 6-barrel Gatling gun capable of putting 6,000 rounds downrange per minute. With a total ammo count of 640 rounds, the Kai has a trigger time of 6.4 seconds. The high-velocity rounds, paired with the high fire rate, make this one of the best guns for top-tier jet combat. The gun is also capable of killing light pillboxes and medium tanks if ground pounding is more your thing, or you want a little more RP before the game ends. Now, for the part you've all been waiting for, the air-to-air missiles. The Kai currently has access to 3 different missiles. The first and only IR missile available to the Kai are the AIM-9P Sidewinders, a 20G short-range IR missile with an average flare resistance. By this point in the Japanese tech tree, you will be well familiar with them. The second missile you get is the Seven E2 Sparrow, a 15G semi-active radar homing missile with a theoretical max range of 31 miles. Practically, this is more along the lines of 7 to 12 miles. This was your top missile in the F4EJ, so you should be familiar with this missile at this point. Though it's a little bit better on the Kai thanks to the pulse Doppler radar allowing for them to be used in a wider range of scenarios that the base EJ was not able to employ them in. The third and final missile, at least for the moment, is the Seven E2 Sparrow. This is an upgrade to the base AIM-7E that attempted to turn the missile into a dogfight missile, so the missile could be used at shorter ranges. This came about due to the rules of engagements limiting US Phantoms in Vietnam to having to visually ID a target before being allowed to fire. In War Thunder, this translates to a 25G maximum overload, and it can track immediately off the rail, where all previous Sparrows would need 1 to 2 seconds after launch to begin tracking. The missile still retains the max range of the base AIM-7E, as well as the practical max range, but the ability to track right off the rail in quick warm-up times of semi-active radar homing missiles makes it an effective head-on weapon. This missile, paired with the AN APG-66J, makes the Kai one of the deadliest planes in War Thunder. All these weapons are nice, but you will still have to grind for them after unlocking the Kai. Thankfully, the Kai has one of the easiest stock grinds at top tier. Stock, you can equip 2 AIM-9Ps, and you can quickly get 4 thanks to the AIM-9P mod being a tier 1 modification. You'll also get 4 750 or 500 pound bombs, and base bombing's more your thing. There's no real difference between the F4EJ and the F4EJ Kai's flight performance. The Kai still retains the same 2 General Electric J79 GE17 engines, each capable of producing 5,200 kilograms of force dry and 8,010 kilograms of force in afterburner. Since leading-edge wing slats were not added in the Kai upgrade, it still lacks the maneuverability of the American F4E, so don't expect to tangle with a MiG-21, Viggen, or MiG-23 and end up on top. Overall, the Kai is still the Mach 2 capable brick that most Phantoms are. However, this brick is armed with 90 countermeasures, a great radar, and missiles that don't require you to enter a dogfight to get kills. My typical flight envelope is to side climb at 20 degrees up to 20,000 feet before leveling off and searching for targets with my radar and Mark I eyeballs. Then, after engaging high altitude targets with Sparrows, I'll begin looking for low altitude targets, prioritizing those that are a threat to my teammates. Thanks to the pulse Doppler radar, I'm able to use the ACM mode to quickly lock up targets and either slave AIM-9s or AIM-7s onto my targets while diving in. Don't be afraid to take head-ons with the Kai, since it excels in this regard. Again, use the ACM mode to lock up your target and then quickly fire a Sparrow their wave before evading any return fire. If you're targeting a MiG-23 or 27 in a head-on, Be sure to drop a few flares before you evade to preemptively decoy any R60Ms coming your way. Let's take a look at some pros and cons, starting with the pros. Having the best radar in the game, combined with the best semi-active radar homing missile in the game, easily makes this the best Phantom in the game. Stock, you get 2 AIM-9Ps, and with the AIM-9P modification in Tier 1, makes this by far the easiest stock grind for any end-of-the-line plane. You get 90 countermeasures, so you can be a little generous when deploying them. I usually stick to just flares, as I rely on offset and crank maneuvers to dodge semi-active radar homing missiles at high altitude. Though, chaff can be relatively effective against most opponents you'll end up facing, if you deploy it preemptively, so ultimately, it's your choice. As for the cons, the Phantoms aren't called brakes for nothing. Stick to high-speed slashing attacks and avoid getting dragged into dogfights where you don't have the numbers advantage. The F4EJ Kai lacks any kind of guided air-to-ground weapons, which really prevents it from being a viable ground RB plane, as if a SAM looks your way, there really isn't anything you can do to counter it. As for my final verdict, this plane is the best missile carrier in the game, hands down in my opinion. You have the best radar in the game, combined with 4 good IR missiles and 4 of the best semi-active radar homing missiles in the game. This gives you plenty of ordnance to distribute amongst the enemy team. If you somehow run out of missiles, then you're either having one amazing game, or you're having a really bad game, and it's probably about time you tried something else. The F4EJ Kai also has room to grow, since it's able to carry newer sidewinders than Sparrows, so expect to see these missiles later on once newer planes are added to other nations. For all of you who subscribed after my MiG-23 video, thanks a lot. I'm hoping to reach 100 subscribers by the end of the year, so this past week has been a good step in that direction. I'd also like to give a big thanks to General Lee and Tor for helping me with the intro and thumbnail. Lee also uploads War Thunder content, mainly short clips of War Thunder gameplay, so if you want to check him out, I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching, and I hope y'all have a great day.